In this section, we will be discussing about samplers in jMeter. So, let us see that in jMeter, we will launch jMeter. For launching jMeter, we have to go to jMeter folder and we need to go to bin folder of Apache jMeter. So it's not here, it will be in download folder. So we will go in here, we can see Apache jMeter 4.0. we will go in bin folder, and in bin folder we will open jMeter by clicking on window batch file. Now jMeter window will open. Let us see, we will need to wait for some time for jMeter GUI to open. It will take a couple of seconds, we need to wait for some times. So today's topic is sampler. So let us learn what is sampler in jMeter. We know that in real time when we send request to the server, we get response from the server. Now when we send request to the server, we get response from the server. Everyone knows that for getting response from the server, we need to send the request accordingly. Same thing is done by jMeter. Using sampler, which is used to send different types of requests to the server. I in return get response from the server. So we can say that sampler are actual requests which is sent to the server through jMeter. What I want to say is that sampler is added to thread group. So it is important to understand that sampler is added to thread group. So we will see how sampler is added to thread group. So in jMeter, I am first adding thread group. Let us see, this is thread group. I am naming it as my thread group. Now I am adding one sampler. Now when I am adding sampler, there are different types of sampler: HTTP request, test, action, debug sampler, this, JDBC request, this, JSR223 sampler, JUnit request, Java request, this, SMTP sampler, TCP sampler, so many type of sampler. So first of all, we will look in this tutorial, we will discuss some of the samplers like HTTP request, JDBC request, which are most commonly HTTP request, FTP request. These are samplers which are most commonly used. JDBC request, SMTP sampler, these are most commonly used sampler in jMeter. Let us see them in the tool. We saw HTTP request. We can see what is second. Second is FTP request. Let us see where is FTP request. HTTP request we have already seen. FTP request. After that we will see JDBC request. After that we will see SMTP sampler. So we will have little idea of bean cell sampler and JSR223 sampler. These two samplers are mainly used in different conditions, but let us not go in so much detail. We should look at the simpler samplers for have better understanding of jMeter. To in order to start working on jMeter, so first of all we should look all the main samplers. We will see HTTP request, FTP request, and JDBC request and SMTP sampler in this tutorial. So first of all, I have added HTTP request. You saw how we added. Right click on thread group, add samplers, and go to HTTP request. In the same way, we can add any type of samples available in jMeter. So this is HTTP request. So let us learn something about HTTP request. As the name itself is telling, it is used to send HTTP and HTTPS request to the web server. Whenever we will be configuring HTTP request, we can put the name of HTTP request as per our convenience and relevance, and we need to enter server name or IP to the relevant field, and also need to add path to it. Suppose this is my HTTP request. I am changing the name, and suppose I have to add google.com. So I will add google.com, and if I had to add google.com path something like gmail.com, so the path of gmail.com is this. Let me see here, gmail.com, google.com, gmail. This portion will be added in path. If I have to add gmail.com, if I don't, I have simply to add google.com. I will not add path. If I have to add gmail.com, you can see http google.com is already here. https www.google.com is already here. We have to add this portion in the path in order to open it. So this is how HTTP request works. Now we will see another type of request, FTP request. I am removing FTP request. Now what is FTP request used for? Let us see here. Now we should understand little difference between HTTP request and FTP request. FTP request sampler in jMeter makes it capable to send FTP files for downloading and uploading. So this type of request is used when we are doing uploading or downloading a file from the server. We can say that a FTP request sampler helps us to send, download or upload request to the FTP server. Whenever we have to send request for downloading or uploading some video or audio or any content or any file or any document file or any PDF file from any server, or better say FTP server, we need to send FTP request to the server. It is important to understand some of the things while configuring FTP request. While configuring FTP request, we need to give domain name or server name or IP address of the FTP server. Then we need to give file name which we need to retrieve. Now there is option to download a file or upload a file. We need to select the option, and we also need to provide username and password if required by FTP account user. Let us see it here in jMeter. we have to give server name or IP address, as well as we have to give the name of the file which we want to locate. We have to give the name of the file, and we also need to provide username and password if required by FTP server to log in into the FTP server to send request to the FTP server. So this is all about FTP request. Now third which we will see is JDBC request. Let us see here. Third type of, I am removing this and I am adding JDBC request. So this is GUI of JDBC request. Let us first learn about how JDBC request works in jMeter. This is not so commonly used in jMeter. It is frequently not frequently used like HTTP request, but can be used for database testing. We can change a JDBC request in the form of SQL query to a database and get the response. Change some query and get the response from the database server. We can add, delete, update, or we can add record to the database. We can delete record from database, and we can update the record in the database. We can edit the record in database. We can do some modification in the record of database using JDBC request. So if we have to do such activity, we will need to use JDBC request. So how we will do it? We will write a query here, and now one more thing is required. We have to, I am selecting a statement here. If I will select a statement here like select username password from employee table, select username or password from employee table, and we will add connection string in this, and we can write query and we can get the data in the response. So this is used to do some action on the database, on any table of the database. We can use query here, different type of queries as given here, update, select, and many other types of query, and we can write query here and we can get the record added, deleted, or updated in the database. It is a utility provided by jMeter. Now the last sampler we will see in this section is SMTP sampler. It is also not so commonly used in jMeter, but to have knowledge of it, we should understand that it is used to test mail server. jMeter send email message using SMTP or SMTP protocol to the mail server in order to test the mail server. So if we have to, let us see how it looks in jMeter. After that we will discuss why it is used. So I am removing old one, and now I am adding another sampler which is SMTP sampler. Now SMTP sampler, we will need to do server setting and port and all this to establish connection to the SMTP server, and I will write address from, address to BCC and CC. Username and password will be given if required, and subject will be written here, and message content will be written here, and we can send mail using this SMTP sampler. It is just like we are sending mail through Gmail or yahoo.com. The only difference is that it is in this format, and we have to give username, password, and all the SMTP server information and all that, to send mail to the SMTP server. That is all about sampler. We have in this section we have learnt about the important section, which is sampler in jMeter. Now we will look for another topic, that is config element, which plays very important role in parameterization and all those stuff. So we will see it later after this section. So our sampler section is complete, and we have basic understanding of sampler section. Now we will go to config element. So let us see how we add config element in jMeter. I am going to my thread group, add, and let us see where it is. Logic controller, test fragment, config elements. You can see here there are lots of config elements here. It's almost more than 10. We will see important config elements in this section. Let us understand about configuration element, or what is called config elements in jMeter. Now we should understand what are config elements in jMeter and why it is used in jMeter. Suppose there is some data which is assigned to a variable. Suppose there is one data. Suppose data is salary of the employee. Now salary of the employee is assigned to a variable. Suppose it is assigned to a variable sal. So we assign this data to a variable, and we can access the data from these variables. Now when I am assigning a variable sal to get the to contain the information of the salary of the employee, so we can access the salary information of the employee from this variable sal. So we can say that configuration element help us to assign value to the variable. Now one more thing to understand is that configuration element is placed only inside the tree node where it has been defined, and we will see it in jMeter soon. There are many configuration elements available in jMeter, which you can see in the screenshot below. For adding, we need to right click HTTP request, which is the sampler, and then select and config element, where when we move mouse over config element, we see a lot of config elements which we select depending upon our requirement in the as shown in the screenshot below. Let us see some of the most commonly used config elements in jMeter. Please ignore some of the spelling mistake in the writing. So one of the config element is CSV dataset config. So let us see that in jMeter. I am adding my thread group. I am adding one sampler. Suppose I am opening it for suppose google.com, and in google.com, suppose they state that in google.com I am writing number of data one by one in search text box. For that, what I will do, I will add config elements. The first config element we will see in this section is CSV dataset config file. Now what we will do in CSV dataset config file, we will give file name here of the CSV file in which data has been kept, and it will be CSV file, that is comma separated file, and here we will give variable name, username, comma password, like this. All the header name of the data containing, as we see in Excel sheet, the first row contains the name of the header like username, password, name, date of joining, employee date of birth, like all these things will be written here. File name will be given here. We will show its use later on when we will be seeing examples of live testing. Just for now, CSV dataset config is a config element which is used for parameterization in jMeter. Suppose we have to pass multiple values in the request. For that we can use CSV dataset config elements, and we should understand that CSV data file is a file similar to Excel file. There is little difference, we will see it later. So for if we have to understand it in layman language, just understand that it is an Excel sheet file which contains data, and we can enter we can have multiple number of data which we can pass in HTTP request. So this is how our first sampler is used, and it is very useful and most commonly used config elements in jMeter. Now let us see second one, HTTP user defined variables. No, this is third number. Second number is HTTP request defaults. Now HTTP request default configuration elements helps us to set default value when we use HTTP request sampler. Now let us make it more clear. Let us consider a scenario where we are required to send 50 HTTP requests to a server. So if we are using the same server at one time, and after giving server name or IP request in HTTP request defaults, all the sample or request will be sent to the same server, and we need not give server name or IP to each request or sampler separately. So when we are using same server name, let us first of all add that, to make it more clear. We will be adding that in HTTP request. I am adding config element, which is, what is the name of that? The name is HTTP request defaults. Going to add config elements and HTTP request defaults. You can see here server name or IP is given here, and we can add name and value. This is the server name or IP. We have to give it at one place, and it will be repeated for all the requests at one time. So it is very simple to use, and it is used to provide default values. You can understand it like this. So if we are not giving any value, so the value given in default will be considered, will be taken by default. So if we are not assigning any value here, and if we are assigning a value here, it means all the value will be taken, will be value given here will be taken as considered as default in jMeter. Now user defined variable, it is also one of the most commonly used config element in jMeter. User defined variables element in jMeter allows us to define number of user defined variable at one place. One thing to be noted here is that they need to use a user defined variable inside the sampler only. Then we need to define it under that sampler only. Otherwise you will, if you want to user defined variable to be used throughout the test plan, we have to define there in the thread group itself, but we have to use inside the sampler. Then we can place it inside the sampler, and that will be local to that sampler only. So I am removing this old one here, and I am adding config element. It is user defined variable. Let us see how we will be using it. To have short idea of, I am adding, suppose username password field, username some value, password, just a minute. Some value. So we can define it for all the username. Suppose we are using it for username for user 1. So username will be put here, user 1 will be put here. Like this we can create number of records that can be used in this article using dollar signature, like username username. Value will be taken from user defined variable, which is defined from here. Username, all the value contained here will be used here. Here I am defining username variable, and suppose username is there in this record, dollar username. Just give me where is dollar in the dollar username. So all the values assigned here in this config elements will be used here in the username. And suppose in the path I am in google.com and slash comma username. Suppose google.com and we are passing username here. So this username will be taken for the value defined here, username value in the HTTP request here. So this is just a hypothetical example, this is not a practical example, just to make you understand. I have used it like this. So I have put here dollar username, all the username variable will contain all the value assigned in user defined variable, and that will be used here. So this is the example of user defined variable, and it is also one of the most commonly used variable in the jMeter. Now HTTP cookie manager, it is very important element. It is store cookies from the response coming from the server as a result of HTTP request sent to the server. It should be noted that this saved cookies can also be used in other sampler or request of the test plan. So like suppose we are sending a request to the server and we are getting some session variable or something like that, which has to be used by new server. So for that we use HTTP cookie manager. So it is not so much commonly used, but it is also very useful utility and can be utilized at several places. So now we have basic idea of config elements and sampler. In the next section we will look at timers, assertions and listeners. In the test plan part 3, in the elements of test plan part 3, and from then onwards we will go to live test. After getting to know about all the elements of the test plan, we will go to live example and see how the elements of test plan will be used in load testing using jMeter. And after that we will see REST API testing and other stuff. So for that, first it is more important to have basic understanding of elements of test plan, and we have concluded our part 2 section of elements of test plan. This is part 2 section. It will be followed by part 3 section of test plan, where we will explain about timers, assertion and listeners in jMeter, and conclude all the elements of test plan. And after that, in the next section we will be doing live load testing, in which we will be discussing the how we will be using these elements of test plan for doing load testing. Thank you.